survive and advance. That is the motto of the week here in the great state of Georgia. And no, it was not pretty, but the Georgia Bulldogs dug deep and found a way to get it done last night in the Bluegrass State. I might or might not have died a couple different times in that stadium, but here I am. Ultimately, I made it out alive, and so did the Dogs. And in this video, I try to make sense of what exactly happened last night and examine what this Georgia team needs to correct to get where it ultimately wants to go.
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
But all right, guys, now let's narrow the focus and let's get into my top 10 takeaways from this game against Kentucky. And I'm going to start with the top, guys. I think this has got to be the headliner here. Carson Beck is not playing like a Heisman Trophy winner or a potential first overall draft pick in next year's NFL draft. He is not playing that like that right now. The word I saw a lot last night on social media, talking to people in the stadium coming back from the game, was the word regression. How has Carson regressed? I don't know if I'm going to go as far as saying he's regressed, but it is fair to say that he's making some uncharacteristic mistakes. He's doing some things this year, making some mistakes that he just simply was not making last year, certainly the back half, the last half of last season. I think there were two things that made Carson Beck elite last year. Number one, accuracy, ball placement. Number two, processing/decision making. And look, relative to the rest of the college football world and all these quarterbacks out there, Carson's still playing at a high level, but at the same time, he's also not nearly as sharp in either area right now that he was a year ago. And guys, this is nothing new for me. I'm not saying this for the first time. I pointed this out week one. And some people want to push back on me and say, hey, man, you're overreacting. Like, chill out. Carson's playing great. Carson's going to be the first overall draft pick. I'm like, all right, I hope so, man. I hope so. Yeah, Carson's still really good. But I go back to the Clemson game. I still maintain he missed 2 touchdowns in that game. The RPO to Colby Young on the goal line in the first half, that is a touchdown if he doesn't throw it slightly over his head, but still over his head nonetheless. And then there was a crossing route to Dominic Lovett. He puts it on his back shoulder instead of his front shoulder. He puts it on the front shoulder. I had the perfect angle right there. I'm convinced Dominic Lovett catches that football, turns up the corner, turns up the sideline, and scores. All right? That's 2 touchdowns right there. And that game's not even remotely a game. Even going to halftime, I know we won, 34-3. We probably win that game 48-3, right? Or I guess it would probably, we've got field goals there. So we probably win 40 plus something to 3, right? But he missed those throws. And look, we're nitpicking here. So I said at the time, I'm nitpicking. He still played very well, did some really good things for us. But Carson wasn't missing those throws a year ago. And this game, I mean, we're talking about, like, I think it was the first drive, right? This is a classic Carson Beck throw, right? When the defense is giving us 10 yards cushion, Carson, it's an auto throw. He's going to take that. And he was lethal with those throws last year. I mean, it was pitch and catch. It was 100% completion percentage. But first drive, have a chance to keep the chains moving to Dylan Bell. He misses him by 3 yards. Dylan had no chance to make the catch. And it wasn't a contested throw. There was the receiver, the DB was backpedaling. He was giving him cushion. He was giving him the throw. Carson had pressure in his face. He just straight up missed it. He wasn't missing those throws. You might say, well, that's just one throw. Like, whatever. It's first drive of the game. No, that matters, guys. We needed to get off to a good start in that game, considering that stadium and how loud and crazy it was in a primetime setting. We needed to keep the chains moving, have success early, get that defense worn out. So, yes, that kind of thing does matter. And in the second half, you have, I think it was Dylan Bell, right? Dylan Bell streaking across the field. If Carson hits him, it's a walk-in touchdown. It's a massive, like 65, 70-yard touchdown pass, and Carson misses him. Now, I know those are lower percentage throws, so they're down the field. I understand that. I don't care. If you're a Heisman Trophy contender, if you're supposed to be a potential number 1 overall draft pick, you've got to hit that throw, man. I don't care. You've got to hit it in that situation, and he didn't. All right, so he's missed a number of potential touchdowns, and we're talking 3 games, guys. Only 3 games. And look, again, I go back to week 1. I saw what I saw week 1. People pushed back on me, told me I was overreacting, and that's fine. People can think what they want to think, but I saw what I saw, and I stand by that. And I think right now, without Brock Bowers still on this football team to take the pressure off everyone else on the offense because he was just that great, he was just Brock Bowers, we need Carson to take his game to the next level. And right now, he's not doing that. If he continues to miss touchdowns and easy throws that could keep the chains moving, not only are we not going to be Alabama, but again, we're not going to the college football playoff. We're not going to win a title of any sort if Carson Beck does not get back to being the kind of guy he was the back half of last year. He's just not playing like that right now. The guy is still in there. He's still that same guy. I can't really explain what's happening right now, but he's making some uncharacteristic throws in terms of like missing guys that are there, easy throws. And then on top of that, the decision making, man. He's putting the ball into harm's way far more than he did last year. I mean, there's a couple of throws even last night, guys. You're like, he's rolling out. I know he's under pressure at times, but then throwing the ball back across your body to the middle of the field into traffic. What are you doing now? He hasn't thrown an interception yet this year, right? Fortunately, but I think he's gotten bailed out a couple of times. There's a number of throws that he's put in harm's way that easily could have been picked, maybe probably should have been picked, that haven't. He's just gotten lucky. He's gotten bailed out. But he's making some of these decisions, trying to force the ball in a way that he just didn't last year. He was an incredible decision maker. He still processes well, but when here's the thing, and this was an issue for him at times last year. When he got under pressure last year, and most teams couldn't pressure him. Alabama did a good job of it in the SEC championship game. And Carson is not a creator, right? Now, he's doing a much better job of picking up first downs with his legs and just getting some yards with his legs when things break down. But he's still not a guy that when he gets out of the pocket, forced off his spot in the pocket, he's not a guy that's going to create in the passing game when he gets forced off schedule, right? That's just not what this guy does. And we saw that sparingly last year because most teams couldn't force him in those situations. But we've played two really good defenses, two really good fronts in Clemson and Kentucky, and they've both had at least a decent amount of success of pressuring him and getting him out of the pocket. When he's out there, he's making some questionable decisions with the football and putting the ball in harm's way. And those are just things you just didn't really see from him last year. So Carson's got to figure it out, man, because if he does not, this offense will never reach its potential because we've got the potential to be a really good offense. It's there. The potential's there. But he's got to settle down and get back to playing the type of football that he was playing the back half of last year. Because if he can get back to that, we are fine. All of our goals still very, very much in reach, but none of those goals will be achieved if Carson Beck does not start to play like the quarterback that I know he can be. And maybe I'm holding him to an irrationally high standard, maybe, but I saw it from him last year. I know what he can be. He's just got to get back to being that guy. All right, number 2 here on my list of the top 10 takeaways. This might be the most obvious takeaway of all time, but it just stood out to me more last night in that stadium than it has at any point through the first 3 weeks of the season. Guys, we miss Brock Bowers. Duh, right? Obviously, we miss Brock Bowers. But it was just so stark last night. His presence on the field forced every defensive coordinator to game plan around him. Defenses had to direct so many of their resources to defending him, to trying to limit him, that it created opportunities for the other skill players on our roster. It limited at times what coverages opposing defenses could play against us. It just opened up so much for the rest of the offense. And look, we knew that we did not have anyone that was going to be Brock Bowers this year. I mean, I spent the entire offseason saying, hey, yeah, look, guys, I think we have some good players on offense, some good skill guys that I believe in that can be big-time players for us. But just understand, we don't have Brock Bowers. That guy is one of one. He's a generational type guy, and I don't use that word lightly. I think that word's overused, but I mean it when I apply it to Brock Bowers. But we need someone, guys. We need someone to step up and become the guy for this Georgia offense. Whether it's a running back, a receiver, somebody has got to step up and be that guy. They're not going to be Brock Bowers because Brock Bowers is the only Brock Bowers out there. But that doesn't mean that we cannot have somebody that can grow into and step up and become our go-to guy that forces defenses, forces coordinators to game plan around them. Because right now, who are they game planning around? Think about our skill town. Who has emerged this point for a coordinator when they're game planning for Georgia? Like K. Womack for Alabama. When he's, over the next 2 weeks, watching our tape and game planning for us, putting together that game plan, who he's looking at and saying, okay, well, that's the guy that we've got to adjust our entire scheme to make sure this guy cannot hurt us. Like people had to do for 3 years with Brock Bowers. Who is that guy right now? I think we have a number of candidates who can be that guy. They just haven't been that guy yet. I think Dominic Lovett has started to show signs of being that guy. He was a guy I felt would be the go-to guy in the pass game for this Georgia offense in the preseason, and he started to show more signs of that in the second half of this game against Kentucky. I truly believe, guys, I believe he can be that guy, but whether it's Lovett, whether it's somebody else in the receiver position, maybe it's one of the tight ends, they're MIA right now, somebody has got to step up and be the player that puts the fear to the defense's hearts to where they have to game plan around that guy. Because right now, I don't know who that is. But speaking of tight ends, man, our tight end play was straight up abysmal last night. And it honestly hasn't been great the first 2 weeks of the season either. It was just awful last night. It was a brand new standard of abysmal for tight end play with this Georgia offense. I think what we need to do right now, guys, because it's not one of them. It's really all three of them at varying times. We're talking about Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky. Jurasik was terrible last night. I think we need to revisit how much 12 personnel that we are running with this Georgia offense. All right, hear me out on this. Hear me out. I know that's kind of what we've done for the past however many years under Kirby Smart. 12 personnel, 12 personnel. We got all these elite tight ends. I understand that. But I am now in favor with this Georgia offense, with this team, of using a lot more 11 personnel. I just got done telling you I think Dominic Lovett can be the guy in the pass game for this Georgia offense. But the dude only played 28 snaps, all right? 28 snaps. We had 54 snaps overall. He played 28, just a little more than half of our offensive snaps. What about the tight ends? Oscar Delp, 48. Lawson Lucky, 22. Benjamin Jurasik started in the first drive, didn't play well in that first drive, only played 7 snaps. But if you we're gonna play with at least a tight end, right? So if Oscar Delp is your starting tight end, that's fine. 48 snaps, that's fine. But you got Lawson Lucky with 22 and Jurasik with 7. That's 29 snaps right now that I think need to go to Dominic Lovett. At least he needs to get a greater share of those 29 snaps that we are having 2 tight ends on the field. He's got to get more of those snaps. He's got to get on the field more consistently because to me, Dominic Lovett has proven, whether it's last season, whether it's times this season, he's proven that he is far more of a playmaker for this Georgia offense than any of those 3 tight ends are right now. I think here's part of the issue. Here's part of the issue with what's going on with our tight end usage right now in 12 personnel. For years now, we've run all this 12 personnel, right? With Brock Bowers, with Darnell Washington, with Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp last year. We've run all this 12 personnel largely because of the matchups it creates in the pass game. I know you have tight ends in the field, so that means you're going to run the football. Well, that's what the defense has to think, and that's how they have to respond. When they see 12 personnel on the field, 2 tight ends, they have to respond with heavy personnel, right? Because if you don't, then we're going to run the ball down your throat. But really what that does is it has the effect of when the defense has to respond and bring bigger personnel on the field, when we have these athletic tight ends like Brock Bowers that can go out and just gash you in the passing game and just gut you, you don't have guys on the field that can cover them. When you've got an extra linebacker on the field, when you don't have that star defender, when you have safeties that are going to have to get close to line of scrimmage, it creates matchup issues in the passing game. That's really where it's most lethal. Yes, we can run the football, but running the football with 12 personnel to me is a means to an end of creating those explosive opportunities that we exploited so much with Brock Bowers over the past 3 years. Well, here's the problem right now this season. Those guys that we have at tight end right now, they just simply are not making plays in the passing game. They're not making plays in the passing game. So when we are out there with 2 tight ends and these 12 personnel looks, all we're doing in effect, since they can't really exploit defenses for playing with their base personnel and bringing bigger personnel on the field, all we're doing in effect is getting more bodies in the box and getting more guys on the field that actually specialize in defending the run, therefore making it harder to run. So if you're wondering, man, why do we have so much trouble running against Kentucky? Well, number one, Kentucky's defensive front is really good. I tried to tell everyone that last week. They're really, really good. Number two, when we have 12 personnel on the field, they will respond with their base personnel. Their base personnel is designed to stop the run. That's what it exists for. And then you have these tight ends that are not making them pay for in the passing game, which we in previous years we were. Why do we have them out there? Why are we in 12 personnel? All we're doing is making it more difficult for us to run the football. And those tight ends, by the way, are not blocking well when they're out there either. So if you say, okay, we want to have 2 tight ends out there so we can run the football. Well, they're not blocking, guys. Right now, it's not happening. If you look at it, Lawson Lucky, led our 3 tight ends with his PFF blocking grade last night with a 65 grade. Oscar Delp, 43. Benjamin Urosic, 38. Why are they out there if they aren't creating the matchups in the pass game that helps us create explosive plays, and they're not blocking effectively? Why do we insist on having 2 tight ends out there as often as we do, which puts a guy like Dominic Lovett, who was like the one receiver actually making plays for us last night, that means he's got to be on the bench. Why are we doing that? I mean, guys, our tight ends right now, 7 catches for 105 yards through the first 3 games combined. Our 3 tight ends, first 3 games combined for 7 catches for 105 yards. What we need to do, in my opinion, I'm not saying completely abandon 12 personnel, but we need to run more 11 personnel, spread teams out. That will have the effect of creating more room in the box, more room for guys like Trevor Etienne and Nate Frazier and Branson Robinson to operate, and then get somebody on the field in Dominic Lovett who is actually making plays for you in the pass game. Get him on the field more. So yes, I'm calling for, guys, during these next 2 weeks, with the bye week and then the week of prep for Bama, we have got to start to get 11 personnel on the field more consistently. If you're looking for, hey, what adjustments can we make offensively to jumpstart this offense? I truly believe that 11 personnel is going to be one of those adjustments. I think it needs to be one of those adjustments. But here's another adjustment, guys. My 4th big takeaway here today. We need to get more explosive playmakers on the field. Yes, that does mean Dominic Lovett playing more snaps than he did against Kentucky, but I think it's time to unleash some of these young guys. Anthony Evans, Sokovie White, the true freshman. I think Colby Young, I know he's not a young guy. I think he needs more reps. He's playing more than Anthony Evans and Sokovie White, who basically aren't playing at all right now. But I think he needs more reps right now. For example, last night, Dylan Bell, who's a good player, Dylan Bell played 40 snaps. Colby Young played 16. I would like that to be closer to 50-50. I would like that to be closer to even. I think Young, if you look at all of our receivers right now, I think right now I would argue, as I have, that Dominic Lovett is the guy most ready to be that number 1 option for us in the pass game. But I think if you give him enough looks and get him more acclimated to this system, give him more opportunities, I think Colby Young can develop into like a true legitimate alpha X receiver. I think he'd be that kind of guy. I think he's got that kind of potential. We're just bringing him along slowly, but I think he needs more reps right now. Again, Anthony Evans, I don't understand what's happening here. I went to practice like the first week of fall camp. We weren't in full pads yet, but that guy was working a lot with the number 1 offense, And I heard that in subsequent weeks from people I trust that he was still getting a lot of work. But we get to week 1, MIA, not out there at all with the number 1 offense. And I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. You don't complain too much. Hey, you beat Clemson 34-3, nice opening week victory, awesome, right? Everyone's feeling great. But in the back of my mind, I'm wondering, like, where's Anthony Evans? Because this guy can create plays for us. And we need playmakers. You guys have seen, like, we need guys out there to create explosive plays. We're not hitting enough of them right now. We just simply are not. I think Anthony Evans, Sokovie White, those are guys that can be part of the solution to jumpstarting this Georgia offense and creating more explosive plays down the field. Now, first off, we got to call them. We got to call more shots down the field. And we got to block it up when we do call them. Sometimes that's the issue. We're calling them and then we're not blocking it up, not giving Carson time for those plays to develop. But we've got to get guys on the field that can threaten defense. I don't know if you guys are paying much attention to where the safeties are playing us, guys. Their safeties on 1st and 2nd down were playing us within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage consistently. Why would they not? We were not doing anything to threaten them down the field. So I think we need to get explosive playmakers. I know they haven't made a ton of plays for this Georgia team. Yeah, I understand that, but I know the type of explosiveness those guys bring to the table. Anthony Evans, Sokovie White, get Colby Young some more reps. I think that has to happen. Next up here's another adjustment that we can make. Now, I just got done ripping the tight end usage. Okay, I understand this might seem kind of hypocritical here. Or it might be me kind of contradicting myself, but just hear me out here. I spent a fair amount of the offseason telling you guys, hey, Benjamin Urosic is a big-time tight end. That hasn't worked out so far. That has certainly not come to fruition. However, I still believe he can be that kind of guy in the pass game. The problem is we are not using Benjamin Urosic appropriately right now. That's just plain and simple. We are not using him appropriately. He was 100% a liability, a major liability as a blocker last time. We're talking just whiffing on guys multiple times, all right? That has to improve. He cannot play at all if he cannot be at least a functional blocker. But we also have to understand that was never what made this guy special at Stanford. He is a receiving threat. I told you, I don't know how many times in the offseason, for people who are just finding the channel for the first time, just finding this podcast for the first time, let me say it again, all right? The past 3 years, coming into this season, there are only 3 tight ends in all of college football that had more receiving yards from that position than Benjamin Urosic. Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid. That's it. That's the list. This guy is a proven receiving playmaker at the tight end position. We just simply are not using him like that. He is by far, the most proven receiving threat we have at that position on the roster right now. Now, you might say, oh, I like Lawson Luggett. I like Oscar Delp. That's fine. I'm talking about proven production. It's not even freaking close, guys. Go look at the numbers. It's not even close. That is what this guy does. That's what he brings to the table. So use him like that. Why are we trying to turn him into an inline blocker? Why would we possibly do that? Now, I understand if you're out there and we're trying to run some screen game stuff, you got to be able to block on the perimeter. And he whiffed on what's like the second and third play of the game out there on the perimeter on the first drive. Yes, he whiffed. He's got to do better than that if he wants to be on the field. But I'm telling you, this guy is a playmaker in the passing game. We're just not giving him opportunities to do that, man. And that is my biggest issue with Mike Bobo right now. I know people are really frustrated with the play calling. I'm not saying that he's been perfect as a play caller. There are some plays I would like to have back. I think that we need to certainly try to take more shots down the field. I think we need to open the offense up a little bit. Certainly, I will agree with that. However, I have far more of an issue right now with Mike Bobo and our offensive staff with their usage of our personnel. And I think Benjamin Urosic might be the most glaring example of that because we're just trying to make him into something that he's not. This guy is a threat as a pass catcher. Line him up out wide and take advantages of the matchups it creates. If you're going to insist on using 12 personnel, this guy does not need to be lined up in line. That's really not what he does well. Put him out there in the slot, line him up out wide, create the matchups that way. Because if we're going to use 12 personnel and they're going to respond with big personnel defensively, well, move him out. Make them, spread them out and create those matches. Make them actually play him in space. That's what this guy does. And I just don't understand why we're using him the way that we are using him. And he's just a microcosm of that. But I think in a larger sense, the biggest issue we have right now, again, offensively, is not the play calling, it's the personnel usage. We have the guys. I believe that we have the guys. We don't have Brock Bowers, but we have the guys. We just aren't using them in ways right now that maximizes their strengths. And in these next 2 weeks, as we prepare for Bama, that has got to change. We've got to get back in the lab and reevaluate how we are using these players, figure out what they do well, and let them do it. And all right, guys, so next up, let's go to Monroe Freeling. It is time for us to start Monroe Freeling at tackle. But here's where I'm going to deviate from what I have said about this previously. Now, I had a question, I think it was after the first game. After the Clemson game, Monroe Freeling played very well. I think he was the highest grade offensive lineman according to PFF that we had in that game. And the question was, is it time to start Monroe Freeling over Xavier Truss? And that was always the narrative, right? Was it going to be Truss or was it going to be Freeling at right tackle? They were splitting reps there throughout the spring, throughout fall camp, and then Truss ultimately as a sixth-year guy won out. But Freeling was playing and rotating in at both right and left tackle. However, I do not think that it's Xavier Truss right now that Monroe Freeling needs to replace at right tackle. I think it's Ernest Green at left tackle. That's what I want to see. I want to see Monroe Freeling start at left tackle over Ernest Green. Because right now, Ernest Green is just getting whipped far too often. Guys, I said it last year. I didn't want to rip the guy too much because he's one of ours, right? I tried to use it. He was a redshirt freshman last year, starting for the first time. The first half of last year, Ernest Green was not good for us. He was just getting whipped, man. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know who to block. He was oversetting. He was getting overextended. It just wasn't good. Back half of last year did make some improvements. Still was at no point last year was he great, but he got better, which is what you want to see from a redshirt freshman. So I was expecting him to take a nice step forward this year. Haven't seen it. So far, haven't really seen it, man. Monroe Freeling, though, is playing at a high level. And I think that Xavier Truss is playing at a higher level than Ernest Green is right now. Problem for Truss, Truss is not a left tackle. Truss is a right tackle. He's really a guard, but if he's going to play tackle, he's a right tackle. Freeling has the athleticism, the length to play left tackle. That is the change that I want to see in the offensive line. Because the reality is our offensive line is not playing like one of the best offensive lines in the country. It's not. I still think it's got the potential to be that, but it's not playing like that right now. The interior has been very good. Now, Tate Radage is out for we'll see how long. That hurts, but Micah Moore's coming in. He's got a lot of experience, and I trust him. We essentially have like 3 starters at guard anyway. So I'm fine there. Tackle play has been the problem. I think the solution there is Freeling has got to play more. And if you don't want to start him, fine. But he has got to be in more of a consistent rotation. I'm talking like 50-50 split here at left tackle. I think Ernest Green needs to play less for us. I mean, guys, he was a liability. I mean, there are a number of guys had issues on the offensive line against Kentucky. That's a good front. But Ernest Green had trouble, man. Like, he struggled. He by far was the worst offensive lineman that we had against Kentucky. So I think it's time. I got asked the question earlier this season, is it time for Monroe Freeling to start? I said, let's let it play out. Let's see how things progress. If he continues to trend this direction, then yeah, let's revisit that in a couple of weeks. Well, it's time to revisit that. It is time for Monroe Freeling to take over, in my opinion, at left tackle and not right tackle. All right, one more thing on the offense before we flip things over to the defense side of the ball. Obviously, we're offense heavy because that was the problem against Kentucky. Trevor Etienne. So far, guys, we talked about a lot of things that we don't like talking about. We've had to be critical. We've had to critique, but for this one, I want to give some credit to Trevor Etienne. He showed me something in that game last night. We did not have much success running the football for probably, about 3/4-ish of that game. We kept pounding into that very, very strong Kentucky defensive front. We just weren't having a lot of success. A big part of that was we were not threatening down the field. We weren't loosening anything up. We'll get that a little bit later. But I want to give Trevor Etienne a lot of credit, man. When it was gut check time, he showed up. Late third quarter, fourth quarter, game's on the line. Like, we got to do something now or this game is going to it's going to slip away from us. This man showed up. We needed somebody to step up. Dominic Lovett stepped up for us, and Trevor Etienne stepped up for us. He had 58 of our 68 total yards on that lone touchdown drive in the fourth quarter. A lot of times, guys, there was nothing there. He was just making guys miss in the hole or putting his shoulder down and just driving ahead for 2 or 3, 4 yards, getting whatever he could. He showed me that he is the type of guy that fits the Georgia culture. So we didn't see him week 1. You see him as Tennessee Tech. Like, all right, it's Tennessee Tech. But this was crunch time, man. And that dude showed up when it was crunch time. When we had to have it, he showed up. So showed me I knew he's a big-time player. But it was great to see it in a Georgia uniform. So, look, I love Nate Frazier. I also think Nate Frazier needs more carries. I think it was almost inexplicable why he did not see any carries in the first half. But Trevor Etienne wanted it last night. That was leadership. That's what we need to see. I think I tweeted out around halftime. We need somebody on offense to step up and steady the ship. I thought it'd be Carson Beck. I was hoping it'd be Carson Beck. But it really was pretty much Trevor Etienne. He was the guy that stepped up and stayed that ship and was able to help us power that ball to the end zone that one time, which is decisive, but only one time. It's still not good enough. All right, defense. Let's go there. Jalon Walker. Jalon Walker, guys, is the best player on this Georgia football team. No, I did not misspeak. Jalon Walker is the best player on this team. Not the best player in our defense. He's the best player on this Georgia team right now. He is a one-man defensive wrecking crew. I said it so many times that I got tired of hearing myself say it throughout the offseason, that it was incumbent upon our coaching staff to find a way to get that man on the field more consistently than he was a year ago. Maybe he wasn't ready to play a full-time role last year. I would kind of dispute that, but maybe he wasn't. All right, the coaches know more than me. Maybe he wasn't. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. But the fact that he only played 12 snaps against Alabama, I said this I don't know how many times, I know, but I'll never get over it, guys. The most important game of the year. He played 12 snaps. He was our most disruptive player last year defensively. 12 snaps in that game. So After that, like it was like to me, it was obvious. We have got to find a way to get this man on the field more consistently. The coaches had to be on a mission to make that happen. Now, to their credit, they saw what I saw. And it wasn't just me. They saw what you guys saw too. They knew that Jalon Walker had to be on the field, and they spent the offseason trying to figure out ways to make that happen. Whether that's inside linebacker, whether that's him playing some jack, whatever, we had to find ways to get the guy on the field. And he has been, guys, through 3 weeks, he has been the best player on this team. A one-man wrecking crew. Even when he's not getting the quarterback on the ground, he is consistently affecting the quarterback when he rushes the passer. Guys, his PFF pass rush grade was 91 last night. 91, all right? He is a disruptor. And you have to have disruptive defensive playmakers on the field if you're going to beat teams like Alabama and Texas and Ole Miss down the road who have some elite offensive weapons. And I'm just thankful, number one, that Jalon Walker's on our team, and number two, that our coaches have done a good job this year of figuring out how to get him on the field. And guys, that game last night, like Jalon Walker, I don't know if we win that game without Jalon Walker, to be quite honest with you, because what Kentucky is, like, yes, they want to run the football, they want to have this physical downhill rushing attack, but they want to establish that so they can take shots down the field off. They're a play-action shot team, a lot like we have been in years past. We've gotten away from that a little bit recently, but that's still at the core of our offense. Like, that's kind of what we always have been. That's certainly what Kentucky still is. And they had a few shots dialed up last night. They had a few shots, and I think they were going to hit them. But Jalon Walker spoiled them. He got the quarterback, and he forced a scramble or he forced a hurry throw, and the ball was not able to get to the receiver when the receiver might have actually been open for a potential big play. Guys, if they hit one of them, if they hit one of those shot plays they dialed up, and some of them were there, if they hit one of them, they probably win that football game. And we are having a much different conversation right now here on this podcast. So Jalon Walker, it was an absolute nightmare for Kentucky. He was a nightmare for Clemson. This guy played 66% of our snaps last night, which is what I want to see. That he's got to play at least 50%. And he has been. The first 2 weeks of the season, he's been 50% or more all 3 games. And the coaches saw the light. They figured out this guy to get on the field, and they're getting him on the field, and he is responding in a huge way again. I think the best player on this Georgia football team right now. Another guy on the defensive side of the ball that I think deserves a lot of credit is Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. I got 2 more takeaways here. Number 9, where would we be without TID right now? I'm not saying the guy's been perfect. He hasn't been. Nobody's perfect, right? But there were a couple plays last night where he was trying to make a play, was kind of feeling himself, and he kind of cheated inside and gave up the edge. That happened a time or two. Don't love to see that. But you can forgive it when he's been as productive as he has been. And by the way, guys, he's had to play so many snaps for us. Over 80% of our defensive snaps, that guy was on the field. That's way too many. He does not need to be on the field that much. Again, that's one of the things that has made us so good on defense. We've had so many guys that can come out there and play for us. The quality of our depth has been so strong that we don't need guys to play 80% of the snaps. We just don't need it. Even a guy Jalen Carter didn't play 80+% of the snaps. But right now, with the depth issues that we have, all the injuries we have up front, he's got to, by necessity. And he's been so productive. Had 3 tackles for loss against Tennessee Tech a week ago. Had another sack and 2 TFLs last night against Kentucky. And like Jalon Walker, even if he wasn't actually making the tackle for loss or the sack, he's affecting the quarterback. He's getting the backfield, and he is disrupting. And that's what we need right now, especially when we don't have guys like Michael Williams, who is a disruptor in his own right. Warren Brent's can also be a disruptor. And guys, we've had no one really at that 5 tech, which is what TID plays. We've had no one ready to play that position since the first half of the Clemson game, because Michael's out. Michael also plays 5 tech, and those guys pretty more or less going to rotate when Michael gets back healthy. But behind TID, you got Gabe Harris, who I think he's a good player, but he's still light, man. He's even if he is 260, which I don't think he is, he's about 20, 25 pounds lighter than what we need him to be if he's going to play 5 tech. You got Joseph Jonah-Janye, I mentioned earlier, good player. I think he's a really physically gifted player, will be a good player, but he's a true freshman playing against grown men on the defensive line. That's not a matchup you like right now. So he's had to play a ton of snaps, and he has manned up. He's given us everything he's got. He's answered the bell, has been perfect, but has been a big-time playmaker for us up front on the defensive line when we needed it, guys. We absolutely had to have it, and he's starting to live up to that high school hype. So love to see from TID, and he's going to be a very valuable player for us the rest of this 2024 season. And finally, guys, my last takeaway from this game We have got to be more productive on first and second down offensively. Six of our 13 third downs last night were 3rd and 7 or longer. So if you wonder why we have not been as productive on third downs, converting third downs, that's a big part why. We are in 3rd and long, not 3rd and short, not 3rd medium like you want to be. We're in 3rd long far more often than we need to be. And in the moment watching the game, I'm like, okay, so I've always been a proponent of throwing the ball more on early downs to keep the defense off balance. I think you're going to throw into more favorable coverages when you throw in early downs. And I've had issues with us doing that. Early portions of Kirby Smart's tenure here, we got better at that under Todd Monk, and Bobo, I think, did a good job of that last year. So I'm sitting there watching the game, and it's kind of the feeling we're just kind of running into that brick wall, that Kentucky blue brick wall defensive line last night over and over again on first down. But you go back and you count the numbers up, and it wasn't exactly what I felt like it was in the game. Sometimes, the emotion of the game just kind of cloud what you're actually seeing there. But we only ran the ball on 38% of our first downs. I felt like it was a far higher percentage than that in the moment in the stadium last night. I was wrong. Go back and count it up the next day. Today, it's only 38% of first downs we run the football. But even though when we're throwing the ball on first down, here's what my argument would be. Go back and doing my first rewatch today. It's the pass plays that we are calling on first down. Okay, I mentioned it a few minutes ago. If you watched it closely, on first and second down, certainly first down, that Kentucky defense had their safeties inside 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Inside 10 yards, guys, consistently, all game long. And we never really did anything on early downs to try to force them out of that. At least we tried to get a shot here or there, but we never really connected on any of them until much, much later in the game. We have got to be more willing to take more shots down the field on early downs moving forward. So if you want another offensive adjustment, I think that's another one that Mike Bobo as a play caller can make. If you want to criticize Mike Bobo for that, I'm all with you there. Again, I don't think guys above reproach. There are things that we need to improve on. I think that's certainly one of them. And I honestly, I don't know why we're not trying to attack down the field more offensively, certainly on those early downs. Part of me wonders, is it that we don't trust our offensive line to give Carson Beck enough time for those plays to develop down the field? Do we not trust Carson to turn his back to the defense? We don't think the offensive line can protect him on those play action plays. Hey, look, against Clemson, I feel like that was probably the case. So that defensive front is elite. And Kentucky's defensive front is not quite at that level as a whole, but it's still really, really strong. Of all those defensive players, Jalon Walker is probably the best of them. If you look at Kentucky and Clemson's defensive fronts, but as a whole, I would still give Clemson's defensive front the edge. But Kentucky's very, very strong. So maybe we just didn't have confidence. Certainly, I think our tackles, we have issues there. Do we not have confidence in them to be able to protect Carson long enough for those plays to develop? Because if that's the case, we got major problems. We have got to attack on the field. So we've got to give them a shot. We've got to give them an opportunity. If the line can't protect, they can't protect, but make them prove to you they can't protect. I know that we've had some issues at times. We also gave up no sacks last night, okay? We gave no sacks. Now, part of that's because we're calling the game a certain way. Another part of that is Carson Beck does do a good job still of knowing where to go with the football. When he does get pressure, he has answers for what defense are trying to do to him. He is a good processor, although his decision-making was not always perfect last night. So there are reasons beyond just the offensive line why we did not give up a sack last night. But whatever their hesitation is, whatever is causing them to hold up the shots down the field, we have got to open it up, man. What do we have to lose? Because right now, if we can only score 13 points against Alabama, we're not winning that football game. If we only score 13 points against Texas, we're not winning that football game. Ole Miss, we're not going to win that football game. You've got to do more offensively, and we've got to try to be more explosive and loosen up the way that defenses are playing us. We cannot consistently be in third and long. Right now, we are 13th in the SEC in third down percentage. We're only converting 39% of our third downs. Last year, we were first in the SEC, one of the best in the country, converting 55% of our third downs. Again, a big part of that is we're far too often finding ourselves in third and long. No one's third down conversion percentage is going to be that high when you're in third and long almost 50% of the time, which we were last night against Kentucky. So we need to start trying to push the ball down the field a little bit more, figure out who those playmakers are, trust your offensive line. If you don't trust your offensive line to protect, then you got to make a move, right? That's when you got to bench Ernest Green, and you got to put Monroe Freeling in there. You've got to find guys that can protect, because you cannot operate as an offense if you don't trust your offensive line to protect the quarterback to take shots on the field. We've got to figure that out. That has got to change, because if it does not, I don't know, man. I do not know how we're going to get to a college football playoff if we cannot find a way to be more explosive down the field in general, but certainly on first and second down when they're playing us in a way that just lends itself to us actually hitting those shots. But all right, guys, last thing here before I get out of here today, I want to wrap things up by circling back and returning to the original question I posed at the beginning of the show today. How concerned should we be about this game, about how close we came to losing to this Kentucky team that got blown out by South Carolina just a week ago? Now, clearly, there are some issues that need rectifying. They have been made plain to see. We cannot bury our head in the sand. We've talked about a lot of them here today on the podcast. We'll talk about more of them later in the week when we get to our mailbag episode, because I know you guys have a lot of questions. But there are clearly some issues that have got to get fixed. But here's the encouraging thing. None of these issues that we are facing right now are existential crises that we cannot fix. Carson Beck has not been playing up to his standard, but we know what he's capable of. That can be fixed, right? The defensive line, the depth issues, it hasn't been what we want, but that's very fixable. Those guys will be back healthy very, very soon. I imagine, I'm very confident that Warren Britt, I thought he was going to play this week. I'm very confident he'll play against Alabama. I think there's a very good chance that Michael Williams will be back against Alabama. I think there's a good chance that Jordan Hall will be back against Alabama. We'll be okay there. That's something that we can fix. The run game, I think that we can fix that. I think there's some things that we can do offensively in terms of play calling. I think that there are some things that we can do in terms of going from as much 12 personnel to 11 personnel. There are a lot of things that we can do to rectify these issues that we have. These are not unfixable things. It's not really altogether a personnel thing. It's just a figuring out what our offensive identity is and figuring out how we are going to utilize the players that we have to maximize their strengths. Because guys, the defense is great. The defense is great. Only one of only 3 teams that has not given up a touchdown yet. So these are not issues that have no solutions. And it's also week 3, guys. It's week 3. I know who we have up next in 2 weeks. I know where we have to go because I'm going to the game, guys. I know. I'm sure I'll see a lot of you there. But no team is a finished product right now through 3 weeks. No team is a finished product. And guys, that Bama team, that judging by the reaction on social media last night and into today, that Bama team that everyone's just convinced is going to roll us when we go to Tuscaloosa in 2 weeks after what we saw against Kentucky last night, well, let's not forget that it was just 1 week ago that Bama team that you're so convinced is just going to kill us now, it was 1 week ago that they went into the fourth quarter up 1 point against South Florida at home. It was 1 week ago. They gave up 3 sacks and 6 tackles for loss to South Florida at home. Sure, we have things to figure out. Sure, we've got to get better. 0 questions asked there. But we are not the only team in this matchup 2 weeks from now that still has to figure things out, that has to get better in certain areas. Both teams have things they got to get better at. We are not alone in that. Just keep that in the back of your mind there, guys. And look, let's not forget about recent history either. Recent history when it comes to these first SEC road games. We've been here before. This is not new. Now, this maybe is the closest call that we've had over the past couple of years in our SEC road opener, but we've seen this before, guys. Missouri, 2022. I was there in Columbia. In my mind, in that stadium, I remember sitting there in that stadium, guys. I won't forget it. It's seared in my brain. I was sitting there in my mind in the fourth quarter of that game, third quarter of that game, doing the calculus. Okay, how do we still get in the college football playoff when we lose this game? I was that convinced that the game was over, that we lost the game. Fortunately, our guys came back. They showed that resiliency, that resolve that's become a characteristic of this Georgia program, and we found a way to win the football game. Last year at Auburn, I was there too, and I was panicking, man. I was panicking in the stands. I was like, oh, man, we don't have it today, man. It's just not going our way. We fumbled the opening drive of the second half. It looks like we fumbled the next drive. Fortunately, they overturned the call, but we find a way, the resolve, the resiliency, to win that football game. And then what happens both years? 2022, the week after Missouri. 2023, the week after Auburn. The next 2 games, we played Auburn after Missouri in 2022. We played Kentucky after Auburn last year. And we won those 2 games by a combined 94-23. So what I'm telling you is, yeah, we've had games like this, but what has happened the very next time we took the field? We responded in a massive way. Now, we're either those teams the caliber of Alabama, where you're playing in a place like Bryant-Denny? No, that's true, sure. But we've seen this, guys. The history is there. We've had these games on the road, our SEC opener, and we responded the right way. It's gotten our guys' attention. And that's what I kept saying last night. I still firmly believe this. This was the best thing that could have happened to this team, that close call in Kentucky. As long as you win it, which we did. I don't care if it's only by 1 point. I don't care. This was the best thing that could have happened to this team. I recognize that we need to get better. Absolutely. But I'm extremely confident that we will. And now our coaching staff has 2 weeks of our players' full, undivided attention. And look, guys, our players, they're young guys. We now have won 42 games in a row. Coming into this game, we won 41 regular season games in a row. Let's get that correct. And our coaches, they do everything they possibly can to tell these guys. Like I've been trying to tell people in the podcast, hey, Kentucky's really, they're much better than what you saw against South Carolina. I know what you're seeing on tape, but trust me, this team will be ready to play. They're a much better team than what you saw a week ago. But when you've won 41 straight regular season games, it just doesn't resonate the same way. But when you have a game like this, it's that wake-up call that sometimes you need. And now our coaches will have all those players, all of them, will have their undivided attention for the next 2 weeks. And now we're in the position of being doubted. When's the last time Georgia's been doubted? It's been a minute, guys. So now we're going to be doubted going in this matchup in Tuscaloosa. We've got 2 weeks for people to doubt us, right? To drop in the polls, for the spreads to favor Alabama, to move in Alabama's favor. And now that puts us back in the position of being the hunter instead of being the hunted. And Kirby always likes to make, he always talks about, hey, we're still hunting. Like, the TCU national championship game. Oh, we're going to go out and hunt, right? Well, it's one thing to say it, but your players have got to believe it. Your players have got to buy in. Again, when you've won 41 regular season games in a row, are you hunting as much as maybe you once were after you won back-to-back national titles? And you probably were the best team in the country last year? At least a lot of people think that. And the players hear all of that. Well, now, after a game like that, we go back on the hunt. And that is where Georgia is at its best. And the last thing here, guys, I'll leave you with this. That was a culture win, okay? I know there's a lot been made about our culture. I know we had another speeding incident, which is unacceptable, by the way. That's another story for another day. But inside the locker room, in terms of what's happening on the field, we have an incredibly strong culture, and it was put on full display last night. That was a culture win. Wins like that do not happen by accident. 42 regular season wins in a row does not happen by accident. Winning, guys, I truly believe this. Winning is a skill, just as much as catching a football is a skill. And this program knows how to win. And so I'll leave you with this. I'm very confident in this team. I'm confident in the players that we have. I know what we're capable of. And I believe that Kirby Smart, given our culture, given how we know how to win, he will have this team ready in 13 days, and we will come out swinging in Tuscaloosa. But all right, guys, that's all I got for you today. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you checking out the show today. If you enjoy this, if you're a diehard Georgia fan, again, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now. Like the video, comment, let me know what you guys think, and definitely check out the Glory UJ podcast for a whole lot more coverage of Georgia football, just like this stuff that you had here on today's podcast. So thank you, guys. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.